They noticed how unsettled she was all evening, but when they asked, the waterworks started. Grandpa threw us out. When we didn't come home last night, he went into a rage. I think he's drinking again. He told me I had to go, but Ari was staying because he wanted the money. I came straight home and locked the doors. He won't let us have our clothes, our records, any of the things we need. What am I going to do? Beverly grabbed her and put her on the sofa between them. They both petted her until she calmed down. It hit Beverly that night as she was snuggled in their bed that Marcia had said, "I came straight home." That made her very happy. They discussed it as soon as she was rational again. First, you need to go to the courts and petition for custody right away. Tomorrow, if we can get you a lawyer. You'll give them this address as your home. The first thing they're going to want to know is if you can support her. Right now, you're unemployed, so that may be a problem. Have you ever held a job before? Marcia tearfully admitted she had worked at a few burger places, but not for very long. Dave had a small smile on his face. He knew how Beverly's mind worked and knew if she asked the question, she already had the answer. Well then, the first thing we need to do is get you gainfully employed. Fortunately for you, I have some openings at my company. You'll start Wednesday after you fill out the paperwork. Marcia had stopped snuffling and asked timidly what she would be doing. It just so happens I'll be needing a personal assistant in 3 months. It requires at least a 2-year degree, so you'll have to take classes at night. If you fail or stop going, you automatically lose your job. I have faith in you, honey. Don't let us down. Marcia finally stopped crying, and Beverly and Dave got into bed. He kissed Bev firmly as soon as she slid under the sheets. Not that I'm complaining, but what was that for? That's for what you did for Marcia and Ari. You know we're going to have to arrange childcare for Ari. Luckily for us, Sol offers free daycare for his employees, so I'll enroll her tomorrow. She'll ride back and forth with me. Marcia will ride with you. Should we look at getting her transportation? Bev got quiet for a while and he asked what she was thinking. What are we doing here, Dave? We're back together, something I seriously thought wouldn't happen at times, and we're taking in 2 girls, something I could never see happening at all. Are we pushing too hard? I don't want anything to come between us at this stage in our life. Should we turn our backs on them? Send them back to their grandfather and wish them the best of luck? Her grip on him got tighter. Absolutely not. If something happens and we can't keep them, I will personally make sure they land somewhere safe. They're better off where they are right now than anywhere we could think of. I'd like to keep them as long as we can. Please, honey? Oh, we're definitely going to keep them. Marcia's legally an adult, even if she's not prepared to function like one. Ari is the one I'm worried about. She's 4, and if we keep her, she'll imprint on us. We'll become the parent figures in her life. Are you all right with that? She was quiet for a minute. 2 years ago, I would have run from them. 3 months ago, I would have waffled over the idea. But now, as long as you're part of the package, it fills me with great joy. I don't have any idea how to do it, but I'd like to try. It came out of his mouth before he thought. We'll make it, baby. Both of us made mistakes in the past. You should have given at least part of your attention to us instead of being so fixated on climbing the corporate ladder. I should have been firmer and demanded you remember that even if you were my boss at work, we were partners in life. These are mistakes I'll never repeat. I plan on being more open with my thoughts and a bit more forceful in my actions just to make sure it never happens again. I still think counseling is a good idea. After the dust settles with our kids, we need to look into that. He felt tears on his shoulder and wondered if he had gone too far. He asked, and she slapped his arm playfully. These aren't tears of sadness, they're tears of joy. I never thought the term, our kids, would ever come out of your mouth or that I would be so thrilled to hear them. They're the missing link, my love. We got so focused on ourselves, well, in my case anyway, that we forgot what life is like. Children force you to prioritize. Suddenly, it's not all about you anymore. It's about them. I want to experience that so much. Now, let's go to sleep. I have a daughter to train in the business world tomorrow, and you can make damn sure she won't learn the lessons I learned the hard way. You've got to enroll our baby in daycare. I'd love to see the look in Sol's eyes when you show up with Ari tomorrow. We need to call out tomorrow, Bev, at least half a day. I'm sure Marcia needs a wardrobe, especially since her grandfather locked her out of the house, as does Ari. I need to see Sol about daycare because technically, Ari isn't ours. Plus, you need to get her a lawyer lined up for custody. We need to move on that fast. Sometime tomorrow, I'm going to see their grandfather and see if I can get him on board with what's happening. It'll make the transfer of custody a lot less complicated. Agreed, she said in her business voice. And you were right about transportation. She'll need a car to get back and forth to school. We can do that in a couple of months after she's settled into her job. What kind should we get her? Let's wait 2 months and then get her input. No hot rods, nothing too expensive. A starter car should be something we don't have to worry about her dinging. We just need to make sure it's safe. You're into the world, honey. You can handle that. Now, we need to sleep. Lots to do tomorrow. They woke with a smile and a plan to their personal little alarm clock. It occurred to Beverly when they were intimate they'd have to make sure the door was locked. She giggled at the thought. Marcia didn't quite know what to think, and Ari had no clue about the changes coming into her life. She hustled them into the car for a trip to the mall. She showed Marcia the type of clothes she needed to maintain a professional appearance, and she chose well. Then she told her to pick some non-working clothes. There were a few mini skirts that she wanted approval for, and 4 or 5 pair of very well-fitting jeans. She picked up some basic tees and a couple of cuter tops, and then she was set. Beverly sent her to pick her own underwear, telling her to bear in mind how it would look under her professional clothes. She then concentrated on Ari. It was all a wonder to her, but it didn't take long before she was giggling and cooing as Beverly had her try on several outfits, as well as some really pretty dresses. She didn't like the shoe store until Beverly showed her a pair of pink sneakers, and then she cooperated. Dave met them for lunch and tried to act interested when they told him about their purchases. They finally gave up. He'd just have to experience them one at a time. Dave switched the car seat to his truck, and they waved as he and Ari pulled out. Jen was surprised when she showed up with a woman so young. She was surprised even more when she told her what she wanted. See if she's trainable and if she has any business skills at all. I need total honesty after you work with her for a few days. If she's competent, she'll be taking your place. If she's not, we'll find her another position. Who is this girl to you? Beverly flushed as she explained how she came to know her. Jen actually laughed. I wish I was around to watch. Does she call you Mom? Not yet. I'd like to hear it though, sometime in my life. She showed her pictures of Ari. Most were while Dave held her. I'm afraid she's going to be a daddy's girl. I can deal with that, as long as I get the big one. It'll be easier with her. Jen almost fell over in a fit of giggles. Really? A teen, as pretty as she is? What's going to happen the first time she brings home a boy you don't think is good enough for her? You better get used to sleepless nights. Beverly hadn't thought about that. She wondered if Dave still had that old double-barreled shotgun he'd inherited from his grandfather, and if it still worked. Marcia was completely overwhelmed with the whole experience and just followed Jen around like a puppy. They took her to HR and got her paperwork started. She came in on the lowest entry-level salary, $22,000 a year. She thought it was a fortune. Beverly just smiled. Wait until you have to pay your own bills. It won't seem like nearly as much then. She saw Marcia frown and hastened to comfort her. That's years down the road, honey. I refuse to let you move out until you have a degree, at the very least. Then we'll see how you feel about it. She was quiet on the way home. Beverly asked her how she liked her day. It overwhelmed me, but I'll learn. Look at the role model I have. Beverly glowed and Marcia spoke again, a small, shy voice replacing the confident one. I may have made a mistake today. One of the other secretaries asked who I was and Jen told them I was your daughter. I was so shocked I didn't correct her. The word is out. You may have noticed the strange looks. She had noticed, but shrugged them off. She was trying to save the company and her ass, so she expected some strange looks. Don't tell them any differently. Maybe they'll treat you better. I could think of worse things to be called, and have been called. They arrived home to find Dave, and his little helper had prepared dinner, grilled chicken and vegetables. They ate like they had slaved in the salt mines. He wished he had recorded the look on Sol's face when he told him why he was late and what he needed. Ari was in his arms, her little hands locked around his neck. He immediately called Susan, who must have set a speed record getting to the plant. She had that grandmother vibe down just right, and soon Ari was in her arms while they talked. He explained the whole wonderful weekend to them. Susan had tears in her eyes, which confused Ari. Sol looked a little misty-eyed, and he made a comment about the cleaning crew not dusting well, but he was smiling the whole time. In no time at all, Susan had Ari by the hand, towing them along to the preschool. Ari wasn't used to being with people her age and was a little clingy, but the teacher soon had her coaxed into joining them in a game. An hour later, she barely acknowledged Dave when he left. He gave Susan and Sol their history as he knew it and asked if they knew any good family law experts. Susan was on the phone immediately. Seems one of the boards she sat on specialized in children in difficult situations. She got a family law judge to get them an appointment with what she considered the best expert in the field. She made it after normal hours to help them. He couldn't wait to tell Bev. Susan brought him back down to earth with some pretty pointed questions. So, one weekend with your wife and having these children dumped in your life makes everything all right? Not in the least, Susan. We have a lot of feelings and old wounds to sort out. The children won't make it any easier. We plan to find a good marriage counselor, and later on, if things work out, we'll make a few visits to a family expert to smooth the path for all of us. I know this, though. We still love each other. We are also developing strong feelings for those two girls. You know how goal-oriented and driven Bev can be when she wants something, and she wants the whole package. I think this weekend has shown her what we missed out on by not having children and sees this as a chance to correct an old mistake. It'll be up to me to keep her reeled in and balanced. It will be up to her not to return to her old ways. The first hint of that and I'll be all over her. So, no, it's not going to be an easy path, but it's one we're both willing to walk. Soul grinned. Well done, Dave. I can tell you from experience it will be worth all the pain and heartbreak that's coming your way when you watch them leave the nest. Stay the course, my son, and the rewards will be more than you can ever imagine. Now, go to work. You have a family to support now. Dave did work a few hours and was not ashamed to say he was seriously ineffective. Ari bounded into his arms when he came to pick her up, rattling on about what she had learned and all the friends she'd made. The director of the facility smiled at him. Get used to it. She seems really bright, and it might be in your best interest to get her tested in a few years. It will be a challenge to us to keep her from getting bored. Here's a list of things you'll need to get. If you're uncomfortable with it, get her mother to give us a call and we'll go over what you guys can expect. Have a good night. Bye, Ari. She ruffled her hair and walked away humming. The woman must have really loved her job. H got his baby settled into her seat and asked her what she'd like for dinner. Chicken, she declared. He got a few of the toys Bev had bought and put her where he could see her while he grilled. He noted the way she was especially fond of a stuffed dog and he wondered how she would like a real one. She did have a birthday coming up. The big girls got home and Ari ran to them laughing. Bev scooped her up and placed her on her hip like she'd been doing it since the child was born. She was trying her best to tell them she was going to school now, with friends and a nice lady named Ms. Rose. He kissed Bev, and Marcia looked so lost he kissed her on the cheek. Get changed, girls. Ari and I made dinner, and it will be ready in 10 minutes. Ari followed them into the house, singing and laughing as she tried to hold both hands at the same time. 10 minutes later, they reappeared, all changed into shorts and tees, even Ari. The picnic table was quickly set, the tea and lemonade poured, the chicken plated, the veggies arranged on a large platter. Ari had just gotten back from Bible school at a local church the week before, and she grabbed his hand. Grace, she said. So they all held hands while he thanked God for the food and his girls. That was enough for Ari, and she called out, Amen, as she pointed to the roasted carrots. Bev helped her with her plate, chopping everything into small pieces. That night, after a ritual of baths, stories, and the rocker, Bev snuggled to him. She seemed to want to bring something up but didn't seem to know how. Bev, we promised to be honest with each other. If something bothers or concerns you, you have to share. Why did we quit going to church? Short answer? We got too busy and too lazy. Why? What brought that on? Ari, when she insisted we say grace, we need to find a church. It will look good when we have social services around investigating us. I refused to go to a house of worship just to keep up appearances because I'd be afraid the roof would fall in. I agree it would probably be good for both of the girls, but it would also be good for us. We could get involved in activities for people our age and get a new circle of friends. It could end up being a new support group for us. Let's talk it over with the girls before the weekend and get their thoughts. That apparently made her happy because she shimmied around a bit and he felt bare bottom up against a suddenly very interested part of his body. Lock the door, she whispered as her top flew across the room. They woke to Ari pounding on the door, upset that she couldn't get in. He dove for the bathroom while Bev slipped into her robe and opened the door. Ari was crying but soon settled down as Bev cuddled her. No more locked doors, she told him the next night. If we need time alone, we'll make sure the door is open when we're done. Got it. They fell into a routine the next few weeks. Ari never missed a day of waking them up, diving on the bed for kisses and hugs while she chattered happily about what she was going to do at school. Marcia had been taking makeup lessons from Bev, and she'd get ready for work while they entertained Ari. In her professional dress with proper makeup, she looked a lot older than 18. Dave wasn't happy about that. Bev would laugh. Everybody knows she's the boss's daughter. There may be some interest. I would be disappointed if there wasn't, as pretty as she is, but it's a professional environment in gin, and I watch her like a hawk. Still, she's 18, and I think that because of her home situation, she hasn't had very many dates. I think she'll be really popular when she does start dating. Did you ever find that shotgun? Yes, and I bought a box of buckshot. Bev was still laughing when she went down to breakfast. The grandfather finally came to the house after the girls had been with them for 3 weeks. He came when Dave and Beverly were gone. They had taken Ari with them to the grocery store, and Marcia stayed home to fix dinner. He knocked on the door, and when she answered it, he demanded they come home. Marcia tried to reason with him, saying they wanted to remain where they were, and he got really agitated. She thought he might have been drinking. Of course, as soon as they got Ari down for the night, she told them all about it. Dave indicated he would be going over to talk to him the next day, but Beverly talked him out of it. "Let me call Mrs. Ingalls. She'll know what to do." Mrs. Ingalls was the family law expert Susan had recommended. A retired judge, she went back into private practice after retiring from the bench, taking a very limited number of cases. She never had more than 3 clients at a time and was very selective on who she chose to represent. They found her to be a likable person, and Ari loved to sit on her lap and play with her long silver hair, but when it came down to it, she was tough as nails. In one way, it should be fairly easy to give custody of the minor to the sister. She's in a nice home and holds a steady job, has no record, no tattoos or piercings, neat, clean, and quite pretty. If you guys get involved, it might get sticky because of your recent separation. You know you can't adopt Marcia because she's of legal age. There's nothing to stop her from having her name changed to yours or of you formally recognizing her as a daughter. On the other hand, you both have good jobs, are in decent financial shape, and the fact that you're seeing a counselor and are willing to wait a year before starting the proceedings should help a good bit. The grandfather could be a bit tricky, but it will be hard for social services to give him a 4-year-old if Marcia refuses to move back. His age, his history, and his attitude will weigh against him. Try not to antagonize him. Allow him access to his granddaughters in a controlled situation. Get him to see they would be better off with you. If he fights, well, we fight. Bev told Mrs. Ingalls of the incident, and she promised to get social services to inspect their home and get the initial interviews out of the way. At the same time, they would revisit the grandfather, look for evidence of anything that would make the case for an unfit home. They may even be able to persuade him to let them go because of his age and health. We'll see how it goes. In the meantime, keep an eye out. Social services did come out, inspect the house, and interview Beverly and Dave. They could tell that they were impressed with the house. They had scrubbed it top and bottom twice in anticipation of the visit. Ari didn't know who they were and was her normal outgoing self. They didn't have to ask to see her room because she dragged them up to see her toys and stuffed animals, chattering the whole time. Then she dragged them outside to see her shiny new swing set and sandbox. Marcia remained calm and level-headed as she described the atmosphere in the house as warm and loving. She sniffled a few times as she told them it felt like the first home they'd ever had. Apparently, it did not go so well for the grandfather. It seemed Marcia did most of the cleaning and all the cooking while they lived with him, so they found a dirty house and a sink, counter, and table overflowing with dirty dishes and takeout containers. Mrs. Ingalls assured Beverly and Dave that their interview went very well and it was pretty much a done deal. She was right, because a month later Marcia became Ari's legal guardian. The grandfather never once came to see them, and Marcia finally took Ari, escorted by Dave, to see him. He wouldn't let them in the house, slamming the door in their faces. Ari looked sad for a few minutes before cheering up and demanding they snuggle in the massively huge hammock Dave had found somewhere. It was big enough to hold Beverly, Ari, Dave, and Marcia. They would giggle at the way they had to lie down. Dave would grab Beverly and flop backwards, and Marcia would toss them Ari as she giggled and squealed. Then Marcia would lie down beside Beverly and they would all rock gently to and fro. It usually put them all to sleep. Beverly would never forget the day Marcia asked if she could snuggle with Dave for a change. She sometimes found them asleep in the hammock, Ari nestled between them. She took pictures, and Marcia put them on Facebook with the caption, "Snuggling with our dad." Beverly showed it to Dave, and he surprised them all by rushing out of the room. She found him crying in the backyard. He gave her a huge hug and kiss. "Sorry, it's just something I never thought I'd see." He came back in and gave both girls a huge kiss. He would like to say marriage counseling was a walk in the park, and they only had to go a few times, but that wasn't the case. Their counselor was a pretty shrewd woman. She had them tell her in separate sessions why they split up, and why they decided to get back together. She popped all her insights on them during the sessions. There were times when they shouted at each other, and times they cried and hugged as if they were afraid the other would disappear if they let go. She would lead them along like lambs to slaughter, then prop them back up and analyze everything when they were done. It seems he harbored a deep resentment of her almost unilateral decision to not have children. She resented Dave for trying to bring it up every once in a while. In the end, they learned a lot of things. The primary one was the fact that they lost sight of the marriage in pursuit of their careers. He found that while he was very proud of what she had accomplished, on many levels he resented it, especially when she started minimizing him as she climbed the ladder. She resented the fact that while he was a very good salesman, he didn't have the burning desire to get to the top. He almost laughed at that. If we were both like you, the marriage would have been over long ago. That set her on a crying jag, but after she recovered, she understood his point. She hurt him pretty badly when she said she felt he was too passive, and she felt like she wore the pants in the family. Then he realized she was right about some of her feelings. It was only after she committed the ultimate in disrespect to him that he started pushing back. Sometimes they'd come back still upset and not speak much. Ari would sense their moods and jump back and forth, snuggling until they were both in better moods. Marcia would hover, understandably worried about what would happen to them, until they pulled her onto our laps and Bev would love on her. He would never forget the day he went to fetch Ari from daycare and she came running to him. "Daddy," she yelled as he picked her up. She'd heard all the other kids calling their parents mom and dad and decided that was the way it was supposed to go. He told her, after he got his emotions in check, that if he was daddy, then Beverly was mommy. She seemed to understand that logic because she jumped down from the truck and ran to her, carrying a cutout dinosaur with little red puffballs glued along its spine. "Mommy, look what I made for you." Dave honestly thought Beverly might faint. Then the tears came. Marcia and Dave watched for a minute, and she turned to him. "Well done, Dad." Then his tears started leaking. The dinosaur hung in a shadow box on Beverly's office wall until she retired. She stood in the hallway of their house, waiting. Marcia stood by her side, holding her hand. It had been almost 2 years since Dave and Beverly started on the long road back to each other. This was the last step on the path. She heard the music start and Marcia held the door for her. She was still thinking about the conversation they'd held while they were waiting. "Thanks, Mom. Thank you, and Dad, for saving us, giving us a loving home, and believing in me. I can't believe I'm going to be a junior in college next year. I promise to do well. After all, I have a heck of a role model to emulate." Beverly hugged her hard, trying not to ruin her makeup by crying. "It's me who should be thanking you. I had just about lost everything. My career was going up in flames, my husband had left me, and I had nothing left. Then I came to that cookout to make one more effort to get my life back. I not only got my husband back, I got a family as a bonus. Have I told you how much I love you and Ari, and how proud I am of you?" Marcia laughed. "Every day. It'll probably take another 30 or 40 years before I get tired of it. Now straighten that face. It's almost time." She walked through the door to the cheers and claps of their friends. The reverend of the Episcopalian church they had been attending for the last 14 months was standing at the bower, smiling. Their friends from the age-appropriate group they had joined were there. Jen had even flown in with her husband and 5-month-old son. Sol stood beside Dave, while Susan, dressed to match Marcia and Ariana, took her place on the opposite side from Marcia. 6-year-old Ari was standing there with a basket of rose petals, flanked by their, translate, her, boxers, Sunny and Sugar. Each had a little pillow strapped on their back. They stood for a minute, enjoying the scene before Dave slowly walked down the red carpet, preceded by Ari spreading rose petals. The dogs were in their usual positions, one step behind her. They joined hands in front of the Reverend and recited their vows again. She got a big surprise when Ari handed Dave her ring. Dave had taken it to the jeweler's for cleaning and had a large diamond-encrusted band wrapped around it. She let him slip it on her finger, glancing at the mother's ring the girls had gotten her for her last birthday, the 2 different stones twinkling in the twilight. She let a tear slip down her cheek when the Reverend asked who gave this woman away, and Sol answered, "Their daughters do." It was the 3rd most important day in his life. The first was marrying Beverly the first time. The second was the day Ari's adoption papers were signed and she got to carry their last name. Marcia broke down when he told her she would have to take their last name, too, giving her the papers. All she had to do was file them, and the Waxman family was complete. He grinned as he slipped the expensive band on her finger. It symbolized the old with the original setting, and a new beginning with the upgrade. He already had the one for their 30th anniversary in mind. If he thought he had a surprise for her, she one-upped him in a spectacular way. After the vows and the kiss, she called for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming, old friends and new. There is one more thing to celebrate tonight." She turned and took both his hands and said the words he never in his life expected to hear. "Honey, you know I had a doctor's appointment yesterday. It was to confirm something I already knew in my heart. I'm pregnant, honey, 8 weeks along. I have no idea how it happened, but I consider it a gift from God." "Oh, and it's a girl." People started clapping and cheering, and he reacted in a way they never suspected. He fainted. Beverly and Dave sat and watched Ari cross the stage to receive her high school diploma, just as they had watched Marcia do the same for her college degree 10 years earlier. Ari had graduated with honors and would be following Marcia to the same university. Dave grinned at Marcia while he held his 4-year-old grandson on his lap. She grinned back while she held his twin sister. Though Beverly was a terrific mother, it paled to how she doted on the grandchildren. Marcia had inherited her grandfather's house when he passed, and she had remodeled it to suit her and her then new husband. It made it really easy to see the grandkids, as they had a gravel path that led from back door to back door. He had already subdivided 2 acres in between them to build Ari a home when it came time. He'd also bought an empty lot next door for the terror that was squirming on the seat between Bev and himself. Their daughter, Haley, must have been a tornado or hurricane in her past life, judging from the way she lived her life. Always in motion, always on the way to somewhere else. About the only one who could calm her was Ari, who she had followed around as soon as she could walk. The thought of her hitting puberty scared him to death. Maybe it was time to buy a new box of buckshot. Beverly retired at 50, jumping off the corporate plane with a silver parachute, sporting gold overlay. She had saved the company, and in a move that she said was inspired by Dave, led it to a merger with the South Korean company that had encroached on her territory. It was a win-win for everyone, and she was considered a business was for brokering the deal. The chairman flew down to oversee the merger and talk her into taking another assignment. They were sitting in her office, and he was admiring portraits of a green dragon with red ridge spine tips and another dinosaur not as easily identified that was yellow with blue dots. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm entering a new phase of my life that I want to enjoy to the fullest. My youngest daughter just turned 11, my middle one is getting ready to enter college, and the oldest, well, you know." He grinned ruefully. "We missed the bus on that one. I still can't believe she went to work for the Koreans. Tell her if it doesn't work out, she and Jin will both be welcomed back with open arms. I'll pass it along, but I wouldn't hold out much hope if I were you. Jin really likes her new position as general manager at her new company, and Marcia is having a ball working with the Koreans. It's a little insulting when they trot her out to show how progressive they are for hiring American women and putting them in positions of authority, but she's proved her worth and they really are impressed. The owner has his granddaughter working as her personal assistant for the time being, hoping she will absorb her techniques and skill." They both laughed. "Well, I had to try. Good luck to you, Beverly. Send pictures of the grandchildren when you drop us a line now and then. Think about the consulting position we have on the table. You could work the projects of your choosing for as long or as short as you want. I'd hate to think I wasted all the energy it took to train you. It might break up the boredom now and again. I promise I'll think about it, and you know you can call or email anytime for an opinion. Thank you, sir, for standing by me. It means a lot to me." He seemed a bit embarrassed. "You were worth it. Goodbye, Beverly." She grabbed him up in a tight hug as he reached for her hand, dripping tears on the lapel of his expensive jacket. He patted her in that fatherly way of his before she let him go. She knew, after a year or so, she would consult for them part-time. As long as it was short-term and didn't require extended absences, she was fine with it. She really was good at what she did. She figured when the youngest grandchild started school would be about right. Dave looked at Haley as she squirmed. "Tone it down, HH, which stood for Hurricane Haley. It's about over." As she smiled at Dave, he remembered the time he heard she was going to join the family. Bev and Dave had decided to renew their vows after their counseling and court appearances to adopt their girls as a celebration of the successful resurrection of their marriage and completion of their family. He was already almost overcome with emotions when she dropped the bomb on him. Pregnant at 38. She said she didn't know how it happened, but suspected an interaction with some cold medicine. She couldn't quite look him in the eye at times, and he knew it was deliberate on her part. If she had just asked him, he would have been ecstatic, but he suspected she was afraid he'd tell her no. He fainted dead away when he understood what she'd told him and all their family and friends. She looked completely panic-stricken when he woke up, his head cradled in her lap. She was crying and apologizing, so he shut her up the most effective way possible. He pulled her head down for a kiss that felt like it lasted a lifetime. After that, she understood that he was happy. He worried constantly, but Bev sailed through the pregnancy like it was nothing at all and continued working until he pitched a fit and she stopped 3 weeks before her due date. When Haley came into the world, he was there with Beverly. He was lucky enough to present their newest daughter to her and marveled as the tiny bundle wrapped her tiny fingers around one of his. It went straight to his heart and would always be there. He had the look on Bev's face when she first saw her daughter recorded, and when he felt down or stressed or just plain old, he'd pull it up and just stare. He always felt better afterwards. Marcia had Ari and was waiting with Sol and Susan, their grandparents. They had added them to their brood so seamlessly, many thought they really were theirs. When they got to go into the room and hold the baby, there were enough tears to fill a bathtub, but no one was sad. Over the months, everyone saw the bond developing between Ari and Haley. Ari was so small when they got her that she had only memories of them, and for years she really thought she was theirs by blood. She was devastated when she found out the truth, but Bev comforted her. "You may not be family by blood, honey, but you're family by love. We gotta choose to love you. I, for one, was hooked the very first time I saw you, and you played with my diamond necklace. As far as we're concerned, you are our blood daughter. Nothing will ever shake the love we have for you. Understand? Nothing. Hold your head high and be sure when you hear your name, Ariana Marie Waxman, that it was given by 2 parents who love you very much." He lasted a few more years after Beverly retired before he followed her. Sol's daughter was changing, and he didn't like the direction she was taking. Sol's death had hit her very hard, and she was rudderless for a few months. She finally got over it when Bev showed up and forced her to go to lunch, telling her their story. "When was the last time you surprised your husband with a night of passion? When was the last time you even had dinner with him? This," she waved her hand around the office, "is not worth your husband. I almost lost mine, and I'll never forget the feeling of pain or the struggle it took to get him back. Think long and hard. Amanda, you think Sol would want this? Hell no, he wouldn't. He'd tell you to sell the damn company before you lost your family. Think back. He ran the company for decades and hardly ever missed dinner with his family or any of your important moments growing up. If he could do it, you can do it." It must have worked because she hired enough staff and trained them well enough to delegate a lot of the day-to-day operations to them. When she was certain they could handle it, she surprised her husband with a second honeymoon at a tropical location. They made love every day, sometimes more than once, and she shocked the hell out of him by telling him she'd gone off birth control when she started planning their escape and that she hoped she was pregnant. Their first son was born almost exactly 9 months later. Once Beverly and Dave were free, they started on their bucket list that contained all the things they said they wanted to do or try when they had the time. They bought a motorized RV and spent a lot of the summers tooling around the US, usually with a grandchild or 2 along for the ride. Sometimes Haley came along, but she preferred to stay with her older sisters. Then they shocked them all by spending a month on the island of Crete. Bev had seen it on a travelogue and wanted to see it in person from that day forward. They came home for a month, then spent a month in Portugal. The next trip out was Spain, followed by Italy and France. After taking stock, they decided they liked Crete best and bought a nice 4-bedroom house on 10 acres. It came with grapevines, citrus trees, even an olive tree or 2. It also had a really nice pool. They spent about half the year there. Marcia spent her 2-week vacation there with her husband and kids, and Ari stayed a month with 4 of her friends when she graduated from college. Haley was making noises about getting the house for her and 6 of her friends when she graduated high school. Dave wasn't not too crazy about that idea. Bev learned some of the local language, and one of her favorite phrases meant, "Let's get into the pool naked and fool around." At 56, Beverly could still rock a bikini when she bothered to wear one. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.